like every other summer, I was looking forward to visiting my home country, Greece. From the long sandy beaches and the turquoise clear waters of the Aegean and Ionian Sea, to the lush mountain landscapes, I think that Greece is one of the most naturally beautiful places on earth. Although obviously I may be biased to say that. I also associate some of my most cherished childhood memories with this place. I remember all the late night drives back from the beach, begging my mom for ice cream. I remember picnicking with my cousin, the sunset. I remember when I was a really small kid, I always used to sneak into our local restaurants' kitchens, and occasionally the old man working there would let me peel some potatoes or something. I also remember countless Orthodox Greek Easters and birthdays spent amongst family and friends. And these memories of my favorite place are often what keep me going through the really cold and dreary winter days back here in Belgium. And I think we can all agree it gets quite grim sometimes. But the more Easters, the more birthdays, and the more summers have passed, the older I've gotten, and the more I've started to realize how much Greece is really struggling with climate change. And this picture, I took this 2 years ago from an airplane window. And I know it's a little bit grainy, but you can tell that is a wildfire. And this was actually one of the most memorable moments of my life, because seeing this really opened my eyes in a way to how bad the situation is. And I remember feeling this really strong desire that something had to change, and I really wanted to contribute somehow. And so I asked my mom, is there anything we can do? Can we adjust the way that we live in Greece when we're there? And we did start doing some things. For example, we started picking up trash off the side of the road. So we would stop the car, pick up glass that could cause a fire or flammable materials. I also joined the night watch for a while and helped with the local efforts. But still, I felt like every year I would hear of more family and more friends that were somehow affected by not just fires. There's also other extreme weather conditions caused by climate change. My local area was really affected by floods as well, and there was extreme snow at some point. And obviously, Greece is not equipped for this weather, and the rescue services are often stretched to their absolute limits every year. And so locals really feel like they have to take measures into their own hands to protect their crops and their homes. Sorry, I'll go back now. But I really started to understand firsthand why activists would feel a strong need to take maybe some further steps and to go more drastic in their pursuit of raising awareness for climate change. And so all of these frustrations got me thinking, and they set this question into my head. How far is it actually justifiable to go in pursuit of a good cause, like, for example, raising awareness against climate change? And historically speaking, there have been many instances of revolutions going to extremes. A good example of this is something that we learned about last year in history class. The Reign of Terror was a part of the French Revolution in the late 18th century. At the time, it all started in pursuit of something really great, equality and a more democratic government that would serve the people more. And that sounds really great in theory, but it all turned really violent. So 17,000 people died in official executions alone, and that is completely disregarding all the unofficial and unreported deaths. Many thousands of people were falsely imprisoned or executed without proper trial, and many more died in the bloody massacres that spread across France. The total death toll is predicted to have rested somewhere between 30 and 50,000 people, which, to set this in perspective, is absolutely insane, because the Reign of Terror only lasted 10 months. And so I think we can all agree that this was one of the instances in history where a revolution went too far in what was meant to be a pursuit of a good cause. But history has also had many other cases where often strong and legal measures had to be used in order to achieve the change that was necessary. And one of my favorite examples of this are the suffragettes, and they fought for UK women's rights to vote between 1903 and 1914. And at the time, basically most of the suffragettes movements were peaceful, but they became more known for their more violent acts. So they gained a lot of public attention, and media coverage for example, they broke windows, they were known for burning down public buildings, interrupting political meetings, they handcuffed themselves to railings, and a couple of museums and galleries were even forced to shut down for a while because women would slash paintings in protest. There were even a couple of instances of suffragette violence against individuals. But it was this exact willingness to break the rules that ensured that the issue of women's suffrage remained really high up on the agenda. In Emmeline Pankhurst's words herself, as she claimed in one of her criminal trials, "We're not here because we're lawbreakers. We're here because we're lawmakers." And arguably, it was not just necessary for these women to take more violent measures to gain public attention, but also to defend themselves. Because at the time, there were increasingly more cases of men physically attacking the female protesters. A key example of this was a day that later became known as Black Friday in 1910, when policemen and bystanders of an organized march met women with a lot of violence, and it ended in hundreds being badly hurt and a couple even dying. But despite the huge risks that these women were taking, these were really important parts of raising more awareness about women's rights. And in my very humble opinion, it's probably justifiable to break a couple of windows in the process of doing that. And now, time is back to the present day. There are also some current groups that are taking more drastic measures in hopes of inspiring change. A good example is a group that you might have heard of, who are the climate gluers that are part of the Last Generation movement. The group's tactics involve gluing themselves to roads and disrupting traffic, or halting airport operations in some major German cities. They would also pour fake oil in public spaces, and these protests obviously led to a lot of disruption, and it caused a lot of backlash from politicians and the media, because activists not only face very high repercussions for their actions in the form of very high penalties, but also they were being criticized for potentially alienating future supporters of this really important and relevant cause. But despite all of this, these reactions only prove that protests like these gain a lot of attention. And despite the controversy surrounding the topic, some might even argue that it's important to take drastic measures in order to apply the necessary pressure on governments to fulfill the climate goals, especially when considering how severe the crisis is. So I think this general question of direct action in order to achieve progressive change is something that has been debated for a long time. And history has shown, as we've seen, that often it is important to break the rules. But to what cost to society's values and stability? Often, revolutionary ideas start as a minority cause. And if people in the past hadn't spread their ideas, even by using force, then we might not be able to see it as something natural now. And so, at the end of the day, I believe that the line between justified activism under necessary circumstances and reckless extremism is often quite thin and blurry. The really important part in our pursuit of justice is to make sure that we don't undermine the very principles that we are fighting to protect. But ethically speaking, how far you are willing to go in pursuit of the greater good is something that everyone has to settle for themselves. And that is the thought that I'd like to leave you on. Thank you.